Hi, new homeschooling parents. We have successfully made it through 3 days of homeschooling. A week ago, I'm sure this was the last thing on your mind. I have 6 children myself. My oldest is 17. He's a senior, so we're dealing with some senior disappointments. And then my youngest is 2. So we've got all kinds of age ranges in the house. But I have a little bit of an advantage because I'm a teacher, upper elementary teacher. I specialize in gifted education, and I've been in the field of education for over 20 years doing various things. I had a brief hiccup as a homeschooling mom for 1 year, but I have spent the last 15 years consulting with homeschool families on and off, and I have completed 2 master's degrees in education, almost completely online. So I've had a lot of experience with online learning and virtual learning, and kind of doing what I can, dabbling in it with my students. But it still doesn't, 100% prepare you for the reality of being home and managing a household of kids with lots of different needs. So I wanted to do a couple of videos because I have received a lot of questions from my students' parents, from my family who are in this now too, and for my friends. There's so much information out there, and it quite frankly is overwhelming. And I wanted to just try to break it down a little bit because we are such a a global in such a global marketplace right now, and is very confusing, I think, to be hearing what one person is doing in one state and this teacher is doing this in another school, or even within the same school there's different things going on. And we know that there's always inconsistencies in education, no matter how hard we try. It's the nature of how our education system is set up. So we cannot get around that. Things are going to look different in different places, and that's totally fine, and that's how it should be. But it is hard to navigate. I have family in Vermont, and I have family in New York, and I've got friends in Washington State and California, and things are looking very different depending on where you are and what district you're in. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is technology access. There are some districts who are one-to-one, who have been managing this for quite some time, and have protocols and structures already set in place. And then there are other districts that do not have these resources, and they don't have these systems in place, and so the capabilities are extremely different. Another factor that we have to take under consideration are the resources of our families. So we want to be very careful about making sure that we're as equitable as possible. And when you have rural communities or low socioeconomic communities, it makes this far trickier. So you could be in a district that has a huge mix of that, and that's similar to where I live, where we have rural, we have suburban neighborhoods, we have very high socioeconomic neighborhoods, we have low socioeconomic neighborhoods, we just have a huge mix. And I think that a lot of the country is in that situation. So we have to try to do what's right for all kids, not just some kids. And sometimes that can be confusing. The other factor we have to take under consideration are our special education students. And this would be anybody who has an IEP or a 504, any kind of plan put into place that is legally binding to have modifications or accommodations for their learning. All of these have to be reasonably maintained, and that includes virtual or distance learning. So that is something that is uncharted territories for a lot of our districts and teachers. So we also want to make sure that anything we're doing can meet all of those students' various needs. So that's a lot to take under consideration for our leaders, whether it's a governor or a superintendent or a building administrator. There's just a lot of factors in there. So because, of course, this is unprecedented, there's going to be some different things happening. But what you need to know as parents is that by far, teachers want to do what's in your child's best interest. And I know that myself, my teams, and most of my children's teachers, if not all of them, I mean, we were hustling. And so teachers out there, you know the hustle that happened when we started getting word that we were going to close, or thought we were going to close, or were closed, to try to pull together hard copy work that everybody would have access to. That was no small feat. And so hopefully most kids across this country were able to get some work, even if it was just for a few days or a week, just to kind of get you started and try to figure out, what is going to happen. We're only on day 3. So, we're all just kind of trying to do what we're been directed to by our administration and by our governors. So everyone's just trying to do what's right by kids. And if that means, setting up online learning, wonderful. But it may not be that for everybody. And please do keep in mind that some teachers do not have online access either, because they may be in rural areas where there isn't internet access. So they probably, do their work from school primarily. And now many teachers are not allowed into their school buildings to get that work done. So there's a lot to take under consideration. So my advice to you right now is to have a kind of a big picture perspective right now, and it's difficult. So think about kind of all of these kind of underlying things that all of your administrators and state leaders are trying to sort out. And I know you're trying hard to keep your kids engaged, so I'm going to do another video about that. But I know it's confusing and it's frustrating, and sure, why are they making this decision and why are they making that decision? And I can only imagine that there's just not a lot of time for a lot of explanation. Just trust your leaders that they have your children's and all children's best interest at heart, and that you are not alone. Everybody, in the country right now is trying to manage how we're going to keep our kids engaged and learning, and how are we going to work, and how are we going to survive this time at home and kind of away from all of our normal activities and friends. So it's a comfort to know that we're together in our efforts, and I hope that this can be a resource for you, and I look forward to taking questions as I can and supporting my families. Bye, guys.